Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at onpurposely.com.
One of my favorite introverts is actually Joan of Arc. Then you see the leadership that was equipped within her. I think we even see that through Moses. Moses felt that he wasn't the person that God should have called because he had all these qualities about him that he didn't feel met a leadership quality. But I think we have to look at it first. God will call whoever he calls to the position that they have. And that role is vital, whether you're a Moses or a Joan of Arc, or whether you are just one in God's army, whether you are a prayer intercessor. And I think it's highlighting that and seeing that in other people too, and recognizing that there's a lot of strengths in the introverts. There's a lot of strengths in the extroverts, and one isn't better than the other, but we need all kinds of people.
This is the AllMomDoes podcast. I'm Julie Lyles Carr, your host. We're part of the Purposely Podcast Network, and I am here to do what I can to help you feel encouraged, to bring some information your way, to give you a new way of thinking about something when it comes to raising those kids and nurturing that marriage and chasing that career and growing your spiritual life. I'm so glad you're here today because we are going to launch into a topic that I have been feeling really passionate about. I've been having some conversations about, and then I had someone reach out who has a new book coming out, which is exactly on this topic. I am so excited. So I want to introduce you to Cally Logan. Cally, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
It is great to have you, and it's been so sweet to have a little bit of time with you before we jumped on the hot mics to get to know you a little bit better. You are just a doll. I just can't thank you enough for being here. So tell the listener where in the world you are and tell them about your cat that knocks over Christmas trees and steals vitamin supplements. I want the listener to know about this.
Our off-air conversation. I will talk about the cat anytime. I'm Cally. I'm from Richmond, Virginia, and I am a school teacher and a writer, and this is my third book, and I'm also a cat mom to a very rambunctious cat. He's very mischievous. His name's Macintosh. But we rescued him from the pound, and I think he still has his mischievous ways about him of thievery at times, because he definitely he'll steal jewelry from me, and I'll find it like hidden different places. And I was telling Julie off air that at Christmas time, I was in a Zoom call and he got in the tree, not just messing with the tree, he got in the tree and the entire tree toppled over during the Zoom call, making a loud clash noise. And he just walked away like, oh, was that me?
No big. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. And, I was sharing with you that we have some mischievous animals at this house as well. And, those dramas never cease. But I am so glad that you're here today. And you have been doing a deep dive into a topic that means a lot to me. I think that when it comes to trying to understand our fellow humans, the humans who are living in our house, the humans we are working with, the humans we are teaching in our classroom, one of the things that we tend to take some comfort in, and understandably so, is looking at different people, looking at different aspects of their personalities and going, oh, okay, that's the quiet person. That is the person who's really active. That's the one who acts like a leader. And hey, I wrote a whole book on some of that labeling in a sense in Raising an Original, because I wanted to help parents understand some of the personalities of their kids to be able to draw out some of those threads. However, sometimes this level of labeling that we see in our culture today with us, any of us who really love all kinds of personality diagnostics and things like that, that labeling can get away from us a little bit. And that's part of what you explore in your new book, The Wildflower That Bloomed. So take me back. When is one of those times that you began to understand that you were being labeled with some things that could be kind of limiting?
Labels are such a tricky thing because they can, just one single word can either have a good connotation or a bad one. And it can make you sore or it can make you feel just completely slashed. And that's definitely something I tried to go through in the book, because I think there's a way that we can actually reframe a lot of those labels too, that they don't have to hurt us. When I was growing up, I definitely, commonly in high school was called weird. And at the time, that hurt so bad. That made me feel like the outsider, like I wasn't welcomed. There were definitely those moments where it was like almost something out of the film Mean Girls, where you just kind of stood and you were like, well, should I just go eat in the bathroom? That became an option a couple times for me. And I, as an adult, had the wonderful opportunity to be a school teacher and to witness some of this and see how, with guidance from the Holy Spirit, how I could help in that. But one of the things that I really worked through, not only in therapy, but just even in myself, was healing some of those labels and taking those words like weird and realizing, maybe that's actually one of the greatest gifts God ever gave me, is that I am a little weird. But isn't that great? Because I'm not this cookie cutter. I'm not like everyone else. And like you said, raising an original and kind of highlighting that in yourself and being grateful for it. So taking that word that was used as a weapon against me at one time to make me feel ostracized, and instead say, oh no, this is a badge of honor. Aren't I blessed that God would make me weird? And now I actually ended up getting this t-shirt that I saw from a store that says weirdo on it. And I wear that with so much joy because I'm very glad that God made me unique and different.
I live in a city, Austin, where we talk about that, keep Austin weird. That's kind of the mantra here, is to keep things weird. And we do a pretty good job of it, I have to say. But there is something in us, I think, that often wants our label to match other people's labels who seem more accepted. We want to feel that we are accepted and part of the group. And a lot of this comes when you think about our history as humans. If you were an outcast from a group, it could put your very survival at risk. If you weren't allowed to be part of the farming group, if you weren't allowed to be part of the community, if you weren't allowed to be part of whatever that looked like in a social structure, there have been times in our not all that distant past where that could be the difference between life and death. Sure. We carry that forward today, I think, in that sense that sometimes when it feels like we're being ostracized or we're an outcast, it can feel like, how are we going to survive this, even though we have the things that we need in terms of food and shelter and water, but that feeling can still be with us, that feeling of being outside what's really going on. How did you begin the process of transposing what had been an identifier, a label that kept you on the outskirts, into understanding it was something that was going to bring you more fully into community with yourself? Because, when Jesus talks about that we're supposed to love others the way we love ourselves, I think part of that is really developing a deep acceptance for exactly who we've been created to be. But man, that can be hard, Cally. So how did you go through that process of learning how to wear the weirdo t-shirt with a whole lot of joy?
It's such a strange process, and I think it's very different for each and every person. But for me personally, what it really looked like was developing more of a relationship with God and the one who made me. And I look back and I am so grateful for the lack of friends that I had in a way when I was growing up, or how lonely I felt, because it was there that Jesus met me and where he welcomed me to his table. And I really developed more of a friendship with the Lord. And the more I got to know God, the more I began to understand, oh, it's okay for me to like me. And this is who I actually am. Because society, anybody will say, they'll sum you up so quickly. And they'll say, oh, well, you're this, or you're that. Or we'll put it on ourselves and tell ourselves that we are this, that, or the other. But it was in developing that relationship with God and growing in that, and then growing more comfortable in the skin that he gave me. And that was such a freedom. And so I think the biggest process was just coming to know the Creator more. C.S. Lewis talks about that too. The more you get to know God, the more you get to know the real you.
Yeah.
And I think the process would be different for everybody, but I think the place to start is get to know God. Don't worry about going in with the angle of, well, who am I? But just get to know the Creator more, and he'll show you in the right time.
That's a great way of looking at that. I think so often when we want to understand more about ourselves, want to understand our own identities, we do a deep dive into ourselves, which, let's face it, can sometimes be a really confusing, cluttered, busy place. So I love this idea of making sure first that we are investing in knowing who God is. Since we're created in his image, if we understand him more, even though he will always be a mystery to us at certain levels, that's a really beautiful way to begin that process. Cally, we talked about the labels that society can put on us, the labels that maybe the kids in the lunchroom put on us, the labels maybe we put on ourselves. There's another factor to this that I think is really interesting. And because you work with parents and kids so closely in your educational career, I just feel like you're going to be able to add some insight for us. There's something that I call family mythology. I don't know that I necessarily came up with it, but that's how I think of it, which is in our families of origin, we often get placed or categorized as a certain role in that family. So there is some meme-worthy kind of stuff out there right now that actually resonates with me, where we talk about the oldest sister. So I'm the oldest child in my family. I'm the only girl. I'm the oldest sister. Oh, are you too?
Yeah.
Okay. And there are things that really resonate with me. Like there are things that I think that I go, yeah, that makes sense. And when I meet somebody else who's like, yep, I'm the oldest sister. And I'm like, oh, girl, and we did this and we did that. And yep. But in that family mythology model, we oftentimes can take on some identities within that family unit that may or may not be the fullest expression of who we are. Good. At the same time, part of what's beautiful in a family mythology is it gives you that sense of place and what your role is and who you are. And there is a whole lot that I love about being the oldest daughter. I mean, there is a lot that carries forward into how I still feel about my baby brothers and how I care for others and things of that nature. How do we glean the good from our families of origin, from the family mythologies that may have arisen there, while still leaving the door open for growth, for different roles in different experiences as we move forward in our adulthoods? And how do we not saddle our kids with a family mythology that isn't good for them while still giving them a sense of place and purpose within the families we're building today?
That's a great question. I think a lot of it comes from, number one, acknowledging that God chose you and the time that you would be born into your family, very specifically. And I truly believe that. I think that a lot of the equipping that he does in your development comes from that placement. It comes from the age difference between you and your sibling. It comes from if you're an only child, if you're a youngest child, anything else. And looking at that as something like, okay, this is something in my tool belt that I have learned. And then looking at it in the places where has this benefited those around me? Perhaps has it benefited me? Has it been a gift and an asset? What are some experiences that have been really good? And it's kind of going back in that catalog and that memory book in your mind of, I saw a meme, the other day that was saying, no one thrives better in an airport than an oldest daughter by herself.
Yeah. That's so true.
It is. And I think about the times when I've traveled by myself or if I'm traveling with others and how, I'm just very, I know what to do for some reason. And even if that was my first experience, I just somehow innately had it together. And well, where did that even come from?
Yeah.
Why do I relate to that meme so much? Why is that true for me and for other oldest daughters? And I think it's looking at it, you've been given experiences where those specific skill sets for traveling have been cultivated because of your placement. And then I think it's also being open, looking at the places where have I maybe not been the best. Maybe I treated my younger siblings a little bit too much like they're my children. Maybe I kind of look at them a little bit too much like, oh, my baby brother is my baby. And I'm definitely guilty of that. And it's kind of taking that step back and saying, what is actually my role in this? Because I maybe am not benefiting this person in the way that they really need right now. I'm not being the sister that they need, because they don't need a mom right now. They need a sister. And I think it's taking that step back. It's taking that breath in that moment with the Holy Spirit and saying, Lord, how would you have me operate in this? What do you want me to learn from this? Where is there room for growth? And looking at that as an opportunity to really benefit those around you. And ultimately, that's a gift to you too, and your own experience and your own growth as a person.
I also think one of the things that I've grappled with as a mom, even though I have not wanted to have these static labels on my kids or static roles slotted in for them, it is interesting in the context of how we know people, and when we know people for many years and when we know people through different growth cycles, we find so much security in keeping them under the avatar of, the busy one, the quiet one, the diligent one, the free thinking, free spirit one. And yet I can tell you, Cally, within my own family, one of my kids was the most gregarious toddler through about 9 years old. Like, this is the kid who would sing full out when we would go to get pancakes at IHOP. This is the kid who would get everybody in the restaurant singing together. This is the kid who had a million different Jim Carrey characters that they would portray. And this went on for a long time. And then as that child began to reach puberty, prepubescence and puberty, there was a shift in which that child became far more introverted, far more introspective. Then we had the pandemic hit. And so there was a whole other social thing that came rising up where there was a lot more concern, a lot more nervousness in social settings. I would have never predicted that, Cally, up to this child age 9, 10 years old. And because it was such a shift, there for me as a mom, at times I would be almost insisting, no, this isn't who you are. You're my gregarious one. You're the one who gets everybody to sing the ABCs at IHOP. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And yet how important it was for me to begin to make that shift. And it took me a while. I was hanging on to that kid's role and label as it had been in the family. But to make that shift, to really understand, accept, to help resource, and to value exactly who they had grown into at this point in their lives. What are some ways that we can both honor who we have known someone to be and their history, because there's a beauty in that. There's a beauty in feeling that you're known, while also leaving room for them to develop, for the role to change, for them to show us more of who they are, because I think that can be really tricky for us sometimes in allowing someone to have that kind of runway.
Oh, fully. And I love hearing moms' perspectives on this too, as their children grow and as they become new seasons of who they are. And I think I perhaps love Tolkien a little too much, but I love his love and esteem for trees. And I have a similar love for trees. And one of my favorite facets of looking at trees is that they change from season to season. There's some seasons where they have just the most magnificent leaves, and others where there aren't any leaves at all. And we love the tree in different seasons for different reasons. And we see it's still the same tree. It hasn't, morphed into some different kind of plant or anything like that. But we recognize that there's different seasons, and we celebrate it for the different seasons that it has. And I think the same goes for people, because people will grow and they will change and they will go through different seasons. So I think it's celebrating the facets of them that are a little bit different at the time, but also still remembering with great esteem who they were in the last season, and encouraging them with excitement, in those seasons where they don't have any leaves and they don't have any blossoms or anything, of, I'm so excited what the future holds for you. I don't know. I sense all this budding that's going to come up for you, and I hope you feel it too, kind of thing. And looking at that as, not that they're lacking, but getting them excited for who they're becoming and how they're growing, and those tree rings that are just going to continue on for them and the growth they're going to have. So I think looking at them from season to season.
That's a gorgeous metaphor. Such a beautiful way of looking at that. Cally, one of the things that I notice we do with labels too is they have an assigned value. I think these can differ culture to culture. One of the things that I noticed in our American culture, particularly in our American West culture and in certain industries and things of that nature, is a value that we don't really define specifically, but we all kind of know it's there. So what I mean by that is, I myself feel like I'm an ambivert. I love to go and be social, but I definitely get my cup filled by being alone in an airport, for example, as you mentioned earlier. Oldest daughter by herself in an airport. Thrive, just thrive. And I have found that for the people in my life who are very much true introverts, deep introverts, I remember having a conversation with a friend one time, married to someone who was very, very extroverted. I myself am married to someone who is the captain of all the extroverts. As I was having this conversation with my friend, she was really struggling because her spouse's extroversion, she felt like she needed to match it to be a good partner to him. They were in a business where it probably would have been helpful if she was far more extroverted. But she's not. And I remember saying to her at the time, you do know that being an introvert isn't like a sin, right? And her eyes just filled with tears. And then I kind of felt the emotion on my side too, as I began to realize, wow, we do to some degree value extroverted traits, extroverted labels more in our culture. When we talk about someone being shy or reserved or careful or steady, a lot of times in our culture, that can be seen as less than, not as out there. We don't even understand that those can be characteristics also of a leader. We've decided that to wear the leader label, you have to have this kind of personality, this kind of outgoing, whatever kind of quality. How do we both understand where some of this valuation system is coming from while not being beholden to it? I've seen parents try to talk their kids out of being shy. I have seen parents try to push their kids into what they feel are more leadership type qualities. And yet in the doing, there's a devaluing potentially of how God has woven someone together. So help me unpack that, this whole economy we have put in some of this labeling.
That's so true. And as a very much introverted person, I can attest that, society rarely favors the introverts, or they look at the introverts that they are just the most stale bred people that you will ever meet, and that they just, clearly only prefer to sit in a cave alone, which is not true because there's so much life. And one of my favorite introverts is actually Joan of Arc. Because she was such a leader and she was so bold. But, all of that was fueled by the Holy Spirit in her. And I'm reading several biographies about her right now. She just inspires me so much. But she would go and she would fuel back up in that alone time. And a lot of that fuel was spending time with the Lord. It was interceding. It was in prayer. But even as a child, the accounts say that she was quite reserved and, she kind of perhaps was a bit in her own world. Then you see the leadership that was equipped within her. I think we even see that through Moses. Moses felt that he wasn't the person that God should have called because he had all these qualities about him that he didn't feel met a leadership quality. But I think we have to look at it first. God will call whoever he calls to the position that they have. And that role is vital, whether you're a Moses or a Joan of Arc, or whether you are just one in God's army, whether you are a prayer intercessor. And I think it's highlighting that and seeing that in other people too, and recognizing that there's a lot of strengths in the introverts. There's a lot of strengths in the extroverts, and one isn't better than the other, but we need all kinds of people to be in a healthy body. We need that in our world. And I think it's also kind of breaking away that stigma. As much as we want to look that society is bad, part of society. So we can use our voices in whatever facet that might look like. If that's our social media, I think most importantly, it's speaking to these young kids we're around. It's helping encourage them. Hey, there's nothing wrong. There doesn't need to be a stigma if you're a little shy. And I think it's also recognizing the individual qualities that they have. As much as we might see facets of ourselves in these young people, and we want to almost give them like, oh no, I want you to do better than I did, so I'm going to kind of live vicariously through you. Taking that step back and saying, nope, this is their life, not mine. So what are some unique things that are about them that I want to encourage and I want to help them And I think it's also looking at, there might be some times where they need that little extra push. They need that push out of the nest so they can fly. But it's really living by that Romans 8 spirit of, am I helping encourage them in the right way, or could this actually break their wing? Because I don't want to break their wing. I want them to fly. So I think it's really looking at, how can I encourage them? How can I remove that stigma that if they are introverted, it's not a bad thing? Or if they are extroverted, how can I make them feel equipped but not arrogant?
It's probably one of the number one questions I get being a mom of 8 kids. And that question is, what on earth are y'all doing about college? And I can tell you, with 8 different kids, 8 different learning styles, 8 different ideas about what the kids want when it comes to their careers and all of the rest, college has been a big topic of conversation around here. Well, there is a university that I want you to know about because it just hits so many of the things that are really important when it comes to considering your kids' college education. George Fox University, it's the #1 private school in Oregon. It's a Christian university. It's located in the heart of the Pacific Northwest. And what's so great is, in addition to a top-notch education, students have the opportunity to grow and deepen their faith, and they can learn in this really pivotal time in their lives who God made them to be. I mean, let's face it. We need more people coming out of our universities who know how to be leaders and how to be leaders with character. And George Fox University offers more than 60 academic majors. And that includes a nationally recognized engineering program, a nursing program. It allows your student to pursue their passions and prepare for the calling that God has for them. And let's not forget about fun when it comes to college. George Fox University students have a great student life. There are weekly campus events, there's chapel, there's service opportunities. There are 23 NCAA Division III athletic teams. Here's something that is important to me. There's a study abroad opportunity. So if your student wants to go and experience life somewhere else for a semester, they can do that. There's outdoor recreation because, of course, we're talking about Oregon, so gorgeous. George Fox University could be just the perfect fit for your student as you are looking into college, career, and all that goes beyond. George Fox University, where your student will learn and thrive in the center of it all. You write about the authentic self versus the artificial self and the necessity to live from that place of authenticity. How do you balance out? Because this is something I've long struggled with. You bring up Moses. I think about Gideon. I think about different people in God's word who they might have responded that their authentic self had zero desire to go lead armies or drag Israelites across the desert for 40 years. And they might say, that is not my authentic self. And yet sometimes God calls us to do things that we don't always feel like might align with our understanding of our authentic self. How do we live in such a way that we're being transparent and honest with who God created us to be? And yet at the same time, how do we respond to the call when God asks us to do something that is out of our comfort zone? I feel like this is something that's such a struggle right now for a lot of us, because that balance of honoring the authentic self while also understanding that sometimes we're called to do things beyond that self. We're sometimes called to do things that are deeply uncomfortable for us. How do we know how to know what's what and when's what and all that?
I think there's 2 facets to that. I think number 1, it's being raw and honest and vulnerable in your relationship with God. It's not giving him your no. It's giving him your real. Saying, Lord, I am scared out of my mind.
Yeah.
And I can feel it in my gut. I feel it with every bit of me that you're asking me to step out of my comfort zone. I know it's you, but I'm scared. And I'm not questioning you. I'm not saying, are you sure? But I am saying, I'm not sure of myself. And that's leaning not on your own understanding, but it's leaning on him and trusting him that he's making your path straight. And it's also recognizing, it's in my weakness where, no, I'm not equipped and I'm not ready and I am human, but leaning on in our weakness, leaning on his strength. because it's his power in you that's going to accomplish those things. Because we're just humans, but it's realizing that the Holy Spirit abides in you, and it's leaning on him to accomplish those things that you yourself couldn't do alone, but through his power you can. I think the second asset of it is approaching with curiosity. I don't feel this is a part of me right now. I don't feel that this is what I would say is authentic to me. But what if I approached it with just a little bit of curiosity, even if it's just the smallest droplet, of what if this is actually something that God does have for me, and it's a facet of me I've never explored before. Maybe it's something I'd really like. Maybe it's like when you're a kid and there's an ice cream flavor you never had. And it's like, well, no. See, I'm only a strawberry kind of girl. I'm not going to try rum raisin. And it's like, what would that even taste like? And you give it a taste and you're like, oh, this is wonderful. I actually love this. I didn't know this. Where has this been all my life? I didn't know this existed. And it's approaching it with curiosity instead of fear.
That's a great way of looking at
that. These things we can do, and doing that with God in our walk is, you know what? I don't know what this might be like. This might be really scary for me. But what if? What if it is something that is actually a facet of me I just haven't discovered yet?
I think that's such a great way of looking at that. I love that. 31 flavors for a reason,
Exactly.
You talk about the bully in the mirror. Who is the bully in the mirror? Tell me about her. I'm assuming she brings with her a thought bubble over her head that includes a lot of the things that may have been said to us at the lunch table, including weirdos. So talk to me about that bully in the mirror.
That bully in the mirror can be something fierce.
Yeah.
And I think the bully in the mirror is a conglomerate cultivation of, like you said, the comments made at the lunch table, the things that we've seen in movies or in society that have been placed upon other people, that's a bad thing, and you see it in yourself. And I dare say, I think the bully in the mirror also has Satan yelling a lot of stuff at that bully, and that bully is believing it as well. And we'll say those things to ourselves, which is just awful. And I think we have to first acknowledge that bully is there, and that bully is very real. And I think the second thing is forgiving the facets of that bully that are other people. Going back to that lunch table and saying, that facet of that bully, the thing they just said, Karen said that to me in the 8th grade, and I forgive her. Even if I never have talked to her in 20 years, I forgive her. And I think it's also rehabilitating that bully, because I look at it, isn't it the best in storylines when we see the villain or the bully not defeated, but like reacclimated, where they change, they have that change, and they have that change of heart, and they're actually made into a friend. And so I think it's teaching that bully, nope, those are not things I want to say. And I think especially when you have young ones around you, you got to be careful that bully doesn't just slip up when you're looking in the mirror, because little kids are going to listen to what you say, and then they're going to project that on themselves. And they're going to say, well, mom says that it's really bad to gain 10 pounds. So it's really bad if I gain 10 pounds then, because I don't want to be bad. Mom says that's bad. I think it's looking at it, nope, I got to nip that in the bud, and I got to adjust what I'm saying and how I'm phrasing that. And because little kids are watching you, or older kids are watching you, or your friends are watching you. And so it's teaching that bully to be kind. It's teaching that bully to speak in love. And it's teaching that bully, hey, is that what God says? Because what God says is true. So is what you're saying matching up to what God's saying? Because if it's not, that bully's speaking lies. We're not going to have any of that here.
Right. I love that. Such a great way to think about the things we say to ourselves and the weight that it carries, particularly when our kids are watching and listening as well. So figuring out a way to repatriate that bully. I love that. Well, Cally, I'm so thrilled for you with the release of this 3rd book. It's so exciting. I know you've got all kinds of things going on around this book launch and all the things. The book is called The Wallflower That Bloomed, Finding Your Place at the Lunch Table of Life. Cally, where can the listener go to find out more about you, find the book? And I know you've got some all kinds of fun interviews and things coming up. So where can we go to find out more about you?
Definitely all the socials on, Instagram, I think, is king right now. So it's Cally with a Y. I had someone say your name's Sally, but with a C. And I said, yep, that's right. So we're there on CallyLogan.com. I also write for crosswalk.com. So they can catch up with articles there that are of all kinds of different things. Hang out on the singles channel quite a bit too, writing for that. And the book will be available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, christianbook.com, all the big kudos on there. So I'm so grateful and just so excited. I'm excited to see what God's doing, and I'm grateful that he's using me as a vessel to just share what he wants to share with his kiddos.
Well, I think it's such a great message, such a timely topic. Cally, can't thank you enough. We'll make sure all that gets in the show notes so the listener can go find you and see all the great stuff you're doing. Thanks so much for being with me today.
Thank you, and God bless.
Absolutely. All righty, friend. I know you've probably got some labels that you have put on yourself. Let's just do a little audit. I want you to think about, what needs to be there? What doesn't? What does that bully in the mirror say? And what does God say about you? Hey, go check out All Mom Does. All Mom Does on the socials, allmomdoes.com. We've also got the show notes. That's where you can find all the links. A big, big thank you to our amazing Rebecca, who always takes care of that for us. I love hanging out on Instagram too. Love hearing from you. So hop over there, drop me a line. JulieLylesCarr.com on all the other places.